Welcome to the AI Chat Podcast. I'm your host, Jaden Schaefer. Every day, I cover cutting-edge AI news and talk with the leaders behind it, breaking down what it means for your life and business. OpenAI just stripped Microsoft's exclusive license and they uncapped their enterprise business, and Microsoft's stock is paying for it ahead of Wednesday's earnings call. But before that, the AlphaGo guy raised $1.1 billion to skip LLMs entirely. Elon Musk and Sam Altman have both walked into a courtroom in Oakland together, and a German robotics startup has convinced BMW and PepsiCo that robots should think before they act. All right, first up, we have a Stuttgart-based startup called Secreact. They just raised $110 million in a Series B round of funding to build robots that simulate the consequences of their actions before they actually move. This whole round was led by Headline, and they also had some participation from Bullhound, Daphne, they had Felix Capital, and then I think a bunch of their existing backers like Air Street and Creedom. They announced Sunday, and the money funds two things in particular. Number one, they're opening a Boston office, and they're scaling their Cortex 2.0, which they're calling kind of their robot brain. This is what's interesting specifically about Cortex 2.0. It bolts a world model onto a vision language action stack. So basically, all of the robots that we have today, the AI can just see things and then it picks. Cortex 2 is going to think first before it sees and makes an action. It runs possible actions through a learning model of physics and object behavior. So, it's like looking at a stack of books, and it's like, if I move forward too fast and bump that over, this is what's going to happen. If I move my arm to grab this book, this is what's going to happen. So it's like predicting what its actions will, what things will happen, the physics that will happen after it makes a certain movement, which is really interesting in safety and in, making sure that stock inside of warehouses isn't getting destroyed by robots. They're really understanding the implications of their actions, which is very interesting. And in addition to this, when it is looking and deciding what to do, it's going to pick basically the action that is most likely to work, and then it's going to update in real time as the scene changes, right? Because in a warehouse, when a robot's sitting there looking at, a stack of product to go grab and move, or when it's looking at, a car in a repair shop, it's not looking at a picture, it's looking at a moving image. Things are constantly moving. The CEO is Rad Guild, and he was talking about this. He said, quote, "We bet early that you can't build real robotics AI in a lab. You build it with a data flywheel fed by real deployments, shipping into production, living with the failures." So they've already done over 1 billion real production picks, and they have a bunch of incredible customers. They have BMW, Daimler Truck, and also PepsiCo. This is the same world model thesis, basically, that Jeff Bezos' stealth AI lab is reportedly chasing. They have a $10 billion round. Bloomberg just flagged it last week. I think we covered it already. Anyways, robotics in 2026 is getting to be one of these really interesting areas, and these world models, I think, are going to be a huge part of that. And just like as one interesting thing, because we've been talking about these world models for a while, and I think a lot of people don't understand them, but we have video companies like Runway that has allegedly been working on a world model. We have a ton of the kind of like the top people that there's a bunch of big people that left like OpenAI and Anthropic and other places over the years to work on these world models, and we don't hear about them a lot. So I'm really excited about this. We're starting to see the application, and I think as robotics gets bigger, these world models are going to come out of the woodwork, and we're going to realize, oh my gosh, whatever they've been working on for the last 5 years is incredibly important and applicable to what we need for humanoid and other robots today. Okay, another story is that David Silver, this is the guy who built AlphaGo, AlphaZero, and AlphaStar at DeepMind. He just announced a record $1.1 billion seed round for his new startup, which is called Ineffable Intelligence. The valuation on this is $5.1 billion. It is the largest seed round in European history. It was co-led by Sequoia and Lightspeed, NVIDIA, DST Index, Google, and the UK Sovereign AI Fund. All of them were writing checks into this, so this is a massive round. Obviously, he's an absolute legend in the industry. Bloomberg's reporter Will Mathis had the deal terms first and was kind of reporting on this, and essentially he says that the pitch is in the company's name. The CEO, Silver, thinks that the most important part of intelligence is what he's calling ineffable, meaning you literally can't capture them in language. So LLMs, which are kind of next token prediction models, right? These are instead of, human text or something. He's saying that those are going to hit a ceiling, and his bet is a different path entirely. he's betting on massive scale reinforcement learning agents that learn from their own experience, world models, and what he and Rich Sutton wrote up last year as the, quote, era of experience. Now, this is really interesting because it's kind of a different direction altogether from Anthropic and OpenAI right now. And I mean, you just heard earlier I was talking about a lot of these world models and the importance of them. So this is it's interesting that we feel like in order to perhaps get to AGI or to get to the next level of AI, we're going to have to move away from LLMs and possibly move into world models. Now, this is a theory. We're working with it. I mean, we can see a ton of potential in this theory. So I actually have a lot of confidence in this. But, to this point, Anthropic, OpenAI, these are the models that have scaled the most. They have the most users, and they're kind of at the forefront. But I wouldn't be surprised if these world models start kind of competing. If I'm being honest, I have some skin in this debate because when you actually build production apps on top of these models, the limits of just kind of pure language pre-training shows up pretty fast. Pat Grady, he works over at Sequoia, and he put a quote in their blog recently that I was like, oh man, it's pretty pointed at this exact point. He says, language is a beautiful compression of the world. It is not the world. And I think that's pretty accurate. So if Silver, the CEO of Ineffable Intelligence, is right, then the next decade of AI tools looks nothing like the last 3 years. But if he's wrong, then somebody just lit $1 billion on fire. In my opinion, the investors who are putting money into this are not the kind that lose those bets often. So I think this is going to be exciting to watch. Okay, Elon Musk versus Sam Altman. This is finally going to trial. We've heard the drama and seen the tweets back and forth for it feels like forever, over a year, right? The jury selection started this morning at the Oakland Federal Courthouse. Judge Yvonne Gonzalez-Roger was presiding. The open arguments are happening tomorrow. NPR's Bobby Allen has a preview on this, basically, if you want the full timeline. But the trial is scheduled to run 4 weeks. And the witness list, I mean, this is just pure Silicon Valley tech drama, but we have Elon Musk, Sam Altman, Greg Brockman, we have Satya Nadella. All of them are expected to take the stand, and the case has been narrowed very dramatically. Originally, there was about 26 claims that Musk filed in 2024, so yeah, geez, this has been like 2 years. Only 2 of those claims have survived: unjust enrichment and breach of charitable trust. The arguments basically are going to boil down to this. Elon Musk donated tens of millions of dollars to OpenAI when it was a nonprofit, and then Sam Altman, according to him, defrauded him by converting it into a for-profit now valued near $1 trillion. If you're a knowledge worker watching AI policy, I think this matters way beyond kind of this personal feud that we've seen play out. Judge Gonzalez-Rogers could effectively pause OpenAI's for-profit conversion or rewrite the rules for how nonprofit AI labs become commercial entities, which I think there's a lot of cascading impacts that could happen onto Anthropic and I think onto the next kind of gen of these AI models. Over on X, Kara Swisher called it, quote, the case that determines whether AI's foundational nonprofit promise means anything. I think that's kind of accurate. If you watch the Nadella testimony in particular, I think that's where the actual partnership facts are going to come out under oath, and it is going to be especially spicy given what Microsoft and OpenAI just announced today. So this is wild, but let's talk about what Microsoft and OpenAI just announced today. OpenAI and Microsoft announced a fundamental rewrite of the partnership that has powered most of the consumer AI revolution. Microsoft loses its exclusive license to OpenAI's models, and OpenAI is now free to sell its products on AWS, Google Cloud, and basically anywhere it wants. So Microsoft was kind of holding this back for quite a while here, and I think OpenAI hated this because you saw Anthropic get massive adoption with enterprise. Microsoft is going to stop paying revenue share to OpenAI, and OpenAI's revenue share to Microsoft is now capped. Before it was uncapped. So running through 2030, CNBC's Hayden Field was reporting on this, and Bloomberg, the Financial Times, Information, everyone was basically writing stories about this. It's been pretty widely reported on. Microsoft stock dropped about 5% before pairing to around 2%. Amazon was up 1% on this exact same headline. I think before we get into what this actually means and why I think the bull case is being floated, perhaps, I want to give a quick shout out to my own startup, which is AIbox. If you're paying for ChatGPT Plus, Claude, Gemini, Grok, 11 Labs for audio, image, there's tons of these different models out there. You are spending way more than you need to be. Over the last couple years, I've personally built a company called AIbox. This is what I recommend to my friends who keep asking how to actually use AI without spending $1 million. You get access to over 80 different AI models in one place. You get every flagship from OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, XAI. Plus, you get a ton of open source heavy hitter models. You pick the model that is the best for the task in front of you. So you're not forced to kind of, use one model and use that for everything, right? Anthropic is awesome for text, but it doesn't generate images. So you got to go over to ChatGPT, and then you want to go use something to kind of scale up your audio. You got to go over to 11 Labs. All of that is in one place. The thing that I'm the most excited about is the automation builder that we shipped. You describe what you want in plain English, and it will build the workflow for you. You don't need to know how to code. You don't need to wrestle with Zapier or N8N or learn any other platforms. You just describe what you want, and it builds it. And it is $8.99 a month, $8.99. So if you want to consolidate all of your subscriptions and start automating your real work, go check out aibox.ai. There is a link in the description. Okay, let's talk about what's going on with OpenAI and Microsoft, because OpenAI just stripped Microsoft's exclusive license, and I think that there is a lot happening downstream of that decision. Structurally, what actually changed is that Microsoft is going to remain OpenAI's primary cloud partner. Azure still gets first launch on new products, kind of in theory, but the exclusivity is gone. OpenAI can serve any product on any cloud, and Microsoft is no longer going to pay a revenue share back to OpenAI on resold products. So OpenAI's revenue share to Microsoft is still 20%, but it's now capped, and the cap runs through 2030. So Microsoft keeps the IP license through 2032, but it is non-exclusive, and Microsoft keeps its 27% equity stake. It's currently valued at around $135 billion, according to Bloomberg. The market read on this, though, is actually kind of bad for Microsoft. So Webbush's Dan Ives, who is normally kind of a permanent bull on everything Microsoft, he actually flipped the framing in his note this morning. He said that the deal, quote, puts OpenAI in a strong path forward to going public. And he also said that it's a positive moment for Microsoft because it lets them, quote, develop tech independence from OpenAI. They also can do things like partner with Anthropic and, for Copilot or something like that. So Ives is basically reading into it as both companies winning. But if you look at something like the Kobeshi letter on X, they just posted a stock down chart with the line. They said the AI revolution's most important couple is officially open marriage. I think both of these are going kind of viral, both of these different takes, right? Like, oh, it's good for everyone, or maybe this isn't the greatest thing. I think the second order angles are where it gets really interesting and where I think the surface coverage is kind of missing the story. First, this lands 2 days before Microsoft reports their Q3 fiscal earnings. And also, Azure's growth has been guided 37 to 38% in kind of constant currency, and that is decelerating from 40 the prior year. And Microsoft has been blaming, like the GPU supply, like, oh man, we can't grow as much as we want. There's this kind of GPU supply problem. If Wednesday's call now, has to also explain how losing exclusive OpenAI distribution affects forward Azure demand, that is a much harder story to spin. And second, I think this is kind of the formal end of the standoff that leaked in the OpenAI internal memo on April 13th, where OpenAI's revenue chief, Dennis Dresser, basically told all of the staff that the Microsoft partnership had, quote, limited our ability to reach enterprise customers. And I think that demand for the Amazon Bedrock offering was, quote, frankly staggering. So today's announcement is essentially OpenAI legalizing what they were already doing. And I think the third part of this is that this also kicks the can on the FTC's review of the original OpenAI Microsoft structure. A non-exclusive license is a much harder antitrust target. And I think that timing is not a coincidence. Microsoft and OpenAI both said today they wanted to, quote, simplify the partnership, which I'm pretty sure is just like corporate speak for, let's give the regulators less surface area to pull on. So they're like, we're getting scrutinized, let's change the arrangement. And then, by the time the government, which is insanely slow on anything, gets around to it, it's, a little more kosher. So now, if you want the bull case for Microsoft on this, it's kind of the opposite of my opinion. But if you want it, I think what you could say is that Microsoft didn't actually lose that much. They kept the 20% equity stake, they kept the IP license. They kind of got off the hook for paying a revenue share they didn't really want to pay anyways. And they freed themselves to ship Anthropic's Claude inside of Copilot, which they are reportedly already piloting. So that's kind of the bull case on why it's not really that big of a deal. But even with all of that, I still think Microsoft is the big loser today. The exclusive sale channels was, Microsoft's actual moat. Equity in OpenAI is awesome, but it doesn't really protect Azure's enterprise pipeline. And the entire reason that Azure outgrew AWS over the last 2 years was the OpenAI lock-in. So many companies were forced to move over to Azure if they wanted to get the latest and greatest from OpenAI because that was the only place it was going. AWS now gets to compete on price and surface area with the exact same model. And the OpenAI memo from 2 weeks ago basically tells you exactly what demand looks like. It is staggering. So in OpenAI's own words, I think we're going to see some really big movement over on AWS. Brad Gershner at Altimer has been basically pounding the drum that OpenAI is on a path to $100 billion in revenue inside of a couple years. If he's even half right, then the company that just lost exclusive distribution, Microsoft, to that revenue stream, that's a pretty big hit. So the last piece is that this is the partnership restructure on the same day that Sam Altman, Elon Musk, and Satya Nadella are all walking into the Oakland courtroom for a 4-week trial. And if you're trying to kind of read the future of AI as a business, I think today is one of the cleanest possible signals that the consolidated kind of OpenAI Microsoft era is over. I think we're going to see a lot more competition and deals play out across all of the different cloud providers, the different model providers, all of the different vendors. And I think overall this is good for, capitalism. It's good for the market. It's good for consumers. So I'm happy with this. All right. That's the show for today. If you got something out of it, it would mean the world to me if you dropped a comment on Apple Podcasts or if you hit the stars over on Spotify. It's the About tab where you can kind of drop some stars on Spotify. Anyways, thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to get access to over 80 AI models and an automation builder that runs on plain English for $8.99 a month, go check out my startup, AIbox.ai. A link is in the description. I'll catch you guys all in the next episode.